hello, One Event, where you are. It's great to join you wherever you are. And my name is Joy Blundell. I'm on the ground level leadership team, and I'm joined with Andy Flannagan here, and we're going to be having a bit of a conversation about some of the things that God's put on his heart and some of his dreams for our nation as we go forward. And the vision of Ground Level is to be a movement of churches advancing the kingdom everywhere. And when we say everywhere, we mean everywhere in all spheres of society. And we want to be a body of people who bring whatever God's put in our hand and believe that we can make a kingdom difference in the world around us. And that's why we've got Andy with us today, because we hear that from his heart as well. And so we just want to have a bit of a chat about what he sees for the church in the nation at this time. So hi, Andy, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Joy. How are you keeping?
Very good. It's great to have you with us. Well, I'd love you to, I know some people from Ground Level will have heard you before and others might not. And so it'd be ace for you to just tell us a bit about your context, where you are now, what inspires you, how you've kind of got to do what you do.
Wow. Yeah. How long do you have? I'll try and do the very brief version. Some of you may know I started life as a medical doctor, and in the midst of that medical work, started getting involved with various NGOs and charities that were doing work here and there, everywhere around the world. Started writing songs based on what I'd seen, whether it was sweatshops in Bangladesh or orphanages in Uganda, and people seemed to start listening. So the singing thing actually became the main thing for a while, leading worship, singing songs, trying to encourage people to wake up to the state of our world and the things that were going on around our world. And through working with NGOs like Oxfam and Tear Fund, Christian Aid, started to spend more time singing those songs and speaking to parliamentarians and other sort of power brokers in our country, and spending time around Westminster, realizing very quickly actually that there was no magic dust around Westminster, that there was nobody there operating on a sort of a higher spiritual or intellectual plane than the rest of the country, thinking, gosh, I've seen people with such great leadership skill and integrity in the world of the church and in the world of NGOs. I thought, gosh, we need a little bit of that in there. So prayed into that, started serving into the worship stuff and the Bible study stuff around Parliament. And God opened various doors to get very fully involved to the various roles I've had, running Christians on the left and now leading Christians in politics, calling more people across the bridge from the church into the world of politics to be salt and light. And seen a lot of people now make that journey and trying to look after them on that journey as well. So it's a joy to be doing that. And, it's been a joy to connect with the Ground Level Network so far as well. And I know so many of your folks who are really politically engaged and active, and to be sort of helping and encouraging that journey.
Wow, that's amazing, really inspiring. Kind of going and saying there's nothing to be worried or scared about here, but we're just all normal and we want to bring God's kingdom forward. And we found ourselves in a really interesting moment in time, haven't we? Right in the middle of kind of COVID, not sure what's going to happen in the next 6 months. And as far as we're concerned, at Ground Level, we've been talking about the opportunities to shape culture and to bring transformation to our nation. And I know that's obviously the kind of heart inside that you have. I'd love for you to share with us and maybe have a bit of a chat about what are your hopes and dreams as we kind of get ourselves on the starting block. We're coming out of lockdown. September's on its way. As Christians and the church, what could we do? What could we see as we engage our prophetic imagination for reformation, for us to reform things in our nation and bring kind of healing and hope? What are your hopes for that, and how can the church get involved?
I think the key phrase you used there was shaping culture, Joy. That was, you said, how do we shape culture? And to think about how to shape culture, we've got to think about what culture is. You look at the actual word culture, and it has the same root, from the original Latin, as cult. It's about leadership. It's about the stuff. Culture, specifically speaks into the reality of leadership that we don't even see coming. Leadership that's just out there in the ether, stuff that we don't even know we're being led by. That's what culture is. It's the stuff that's out there, and that imperceptibly is causing us to think what is right and what is wrong, and especially what's causing our young people to think what is right and what is wrong. And so sociologists have looked into this to see what, actually forms culture. What are the main culture formers in our country? And quite clearly it's come out that it's politics. Yes, it is religion and it is family, but it's also education and the media and the arts and entertainment and the world of business. And that's why I'm such a passion of Christians being involved and engaged in each of those spheres of culture, because those are the spheres of culture that influence what we think. Our young people are probably more likely to have an opinion on any issue based on what they see happening on TV, based on what they see happening in a soap opera, based on what they see happening, or what they see on a website, or what they see one of their influencers saying on YouTube. That's more likely where somebody is going to get their information from. And we're really naive to think that just by getting great content into 1 hour on a Sunday morning, that we're actually having a sort of a primary influence on our young people, or in fact on our middle-aged people as well. Actually, we are bombarded by messaging, by media, whether it's billboards or whether it's movies, whether it's advertisement, whether it's sort of government advertising. We see 350 per day, 350 different visual pieces of information. And if we think that we are having the primary influence by just the hour of content on a Sunday morning, we're really kidding ourselves. That actually, so even if you are a church leader who feels like your main role is to pastor the flock and to just look after the folks who you have on a Sunday morning, and you just want to disciple those folks and, bless these folks who are getting involved in politics and education and business, bless them, it's good what they're doing, but actually my job is just discipling the flock. Even to just disciple the flock, you need to do that via the influence in business, media, arts, education, because actually that's where those folks' primary influence is coming from. And we are kidding ourselves if we think we are having the primary influence just on a Sunday morning. We are living in this world, and we are called to be salt and light in the midst of this culture. And as Christians, we need to stop running away from it and run towards it in the way that Jesus did in the example of the incarnation. We need to be running towards culture, desiring to shape it, challenging what we know to be wrong, but also affirming what we know to be right in each of the different subcultures. And that's why we need to be involved, because until you're involved on the inside, you don't really see the depths of which strongholds, which principalities and powers are at play, say in the world of economics, say in the world of education, and also what glories there are to affirm. And also, without being involved on the inside of these places, we can't actually build the relationships that we need to have strategic influence. Strategic influence doesn't come by just from shouting from a distance. It comes from whispering up close with people who we have built relationship with. And because when we're up close, people get to know our lives as well, then there's just a chance that people won't just pick up our kingdom values, they'll actually meet Jesus. They'll actually get to know, they'll actually start to smell the aroma of Christ in our interaction with them. But that doesn't happen by just sending emails. And often the emails that we send as Christians are pretty angry ones. Talk to even the Christian members of Parliament, they say some of the worst communication they get is from believers. And that's because we're not doing it relationally. We're not getting involved as people up close and personal. We're not joining political parties to get involved. We're not joining campaigns to get involved. We're staying safe in our own little clan, and we'll campaign on single issues, and we'll campaign in our Christian groups. And that's the limit of our engagement. And we almost do that to stop feeling guilty about not influencing the world. But actually the harder, but the more entertaining and exciting evangelistic adventure is to get involved in the common ground places, in the sporting fields of our world, working for the newspapers of our world, working in the education service, working in these places where it's not always going to be easy, and where we are going to need prayer, and where we are going to get knocked down because there are principalities and powers at play, but where we're going to need prayer, and where we're going to need God, and we're going to know that every day. So that'll actually make our relationship with Him more vital. And that's why I try to frame this whole thing in the framing of discipleship. This is how God is discipling us. This is how Jesus discipled His disciples. He sent them out into the world. Their main discipleship, their main learning happened when they were out and about. Yes, He trained them up, but He sent them out, and they learned by experience in the world. And they came back and they shared, and then they debriefed. And we are kidding ourselves if we think discipleship means the stuff that happens on a Sunday morning, or like the discipleship course that we do for 8 weeks and then we're sorted. This has to be an ongoing thing, and that's why we have to be getting with alongside the people who are also involved in those spheres, because we're actually the only people who can ask the right questions. Teachers are mostly the only people who can ask the right questions of teachers. The accountability of the questions isn't, are you staying true to your faith and how you're teaching that part of the curriculum? Are you staying true to your faith and how you're managing that particular school? These are the people who can ask us the right questions. Because to be honest, with the rest of our small group who all do different jobs, we can bluff our way and we can make it look like we're being, the saltiest salt and the lightest light. But actually, we need the sharpening of other people who are also involved in that sphere to encourage us when it's tough, but also to keep us accountable and challenge us to, to stick our necks out for God in those spheres.
Wow. So it's likely that people watching this, probably the vast proportion of them watching this, will have a job to go to on Tuesday after the bank holiday, and will be thinking, yeah, I'm in those places. I'm in education, I'm in media, or I'm in business. What would you be saying to them if they kind of maybe got into the drudgery of everyday work and just trying to kind of keep going? What encouragement would you bring to them in terms of kind of lifting their eyes and thinking, I've got something to bring to our nation, when they wouldn't?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what Mark Green, who leads London Institute of Contemporary Christianity, I love what he says about the Lord's Prayer, that we often pray, your will be done, your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. But in that point in scripture and in other places where it's mentioned, it's probably more accurately translated as in heaven, so on earth. And there's a really specific difference between, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, but as in heaven, so on earth. The call is to lift our eyes to heaven first. The call is to lift our eyes to the perfected version of education, to the perfected version of politics, to the perfected version of economics. That, one day, the new heavens and the new earth, all this will be recreated. It will be renewed. It will be restored in alignment with the way that its creator always wanted it to be. That wonderful promise of what our future looks like. And our call is to lift our eyes in the midst of our world of accounting, in the midst of our world of plumbing, to lift our eyes and say, God, what would a perfected version of this look like? If this particular sphere of society was properly and fully and perfectly serving its purpose that you've designed it for, because these things, these crafts, these spheres are designed by God. They're part of the rich fabric of society. They're designed by God. So God, what would it look like for politics to be restored and renewed and reformed in your image? What would it look like? What would a perfected version of it look like? And so I'd encourage anybody that's involved in a sphere to get together with other people involved in your sphere and write something, commit it to paper. This is what it would look like. This is what teaching would look like. This is what accountancy would look like. This is what ethical business would look like. This is what a restored, redeemed version of this would look like. Yeah. And that's if we're talking about the restoration, redemption, and reconciliation of all things to the creator, that's the stuff we're talking about. Yes, it's individual lives being transformed, but it's also it's spheres of culture and society being transformed as well. And some people will step back and say, yes, Andy, but the quickest way to get a sphere or a subculture transformed is for people to be, personally revived, for them to become Christians. And then that sphere, because they're being better people, will naturally become better. And yes, it's both and. This is not going away from the need for personal salvation and for people to be salt and light. But John Stott says this brilliantly when he says, if we put all our emphasis on just getting people individually saved, we forget that this is all about discipleship. Because if we are just spending all our time trying to get people saved, trying to get people to become Christians, then we will reproduce people like that as well. We will make disciples who are the way that we've made disciples. And those people will just want more people to become Christians. So those people won't want to go out into society and have that antiseptic effect and actually have that profound effect. Those people will just they'll reproduce what they've seen. So we have to be the both and people. We have to be the people who are out there in society being salt and light while also crying out for people to come to know Jesus. And it's both and, it's not either or. But we will only reproduce people who will have no antiseptic effect if we just focus purely on the personal and the internal. And external and internal are innately linked. You can't have external transformation without internal transformation. All of us know that from when we try to, do New Year's resolutions and going to gyms and that sort of stuff. It's the internal and the external are innately connected. And that's the excitement. That's the unique place that the church has in the UK. There's nobody else talking about internal transformation. There are other people talking about external transformation. And in fact, the church gets itself into an unhelpful place when we start to only frame all our good works in terms of the external transformation. And sometimes to try and get funding or to try and look good in front of people, we soft pedal the internal transformation that we're involved in. The fact that we actually are wanting, as well as giving people food, as well as training people up with job skills, we're actually sharing our faith with them as well. Sometimes we soft pedal that. And actually we have this unique opportunity. We're the only people that are talking about internal and external transformation. We should be on the front foot about that. And we should be challenging people who don't talk about internal transformation to say, your external transformation projects are maybe pointless. Because actually, unless people are having an internal transformation, unless, it's all very well double glazing that estate and it's going to look really nice. But if we haven't worked on the family dynamics in that estate, then they're going to be trashed again in a few months' time. We can be on the front foot saying, no, we are about holistic transformation. And why are you not? Rather than hiding away and saying, oh gosh, we'll do the food banks and we do the debt counselling, but we'll keep quiet about the faith stuff. We should be the ones on the front foot saying, this is what makes it work. The stats from Christian drug rehab centres are up in the 50, 60, 70% mark, where the ones from mainstream drug rehab centres are down like 10, 15, 20%. This is something to shout about, not to keep quiet about.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I feel inspired and ready to go with your motivational thoughts there, Andy. Thank you. Really good.
Can I share? You did ask about the COVID season, Joy.
Yeah.
Can I just share one thing about that? And it connects with the Christians in politics thing. What we are seeing in the midst of this COVID season, and to some extent in the midst of this Brexit season, is that many of us, I guess, especially those of us who have come from well-off families who you might call middle class. I'm sure that's not everybody watching this, but there will be some people who feel like they've come from that background. It's been hard to convince folks from that background often that politics is important and that who we elect is important, because most of the time our prosperity, our relative comfort insulates us from some of the bad decision making that we see. That's not the case anymore. We have seen up close and personal in the course of these last 6 to 18 months. We've seen up close and personal how even those who usually financially can insulate themselves from some of the challenges of life actually now see that the decisions that politicians make directly affect their lives, directly control their lives, when we're looking at what's happened with lockdown and that sort of stuff. And so more and more people are realizing that actually the character of who we elect does matter. That it's not just somebody, as long as they can get the job done, we'll just delegate that functional part of existence to politicians. It really matters who we elect, because how people respond in moments of crisis, how people show leadership or not in moments of crisis, how people show their integrity and character, that we've realized that integrity and character are so badly needed. Because if you want to, communicate with people in the midst of a crisis, you need their trust. Yeah. And to effectively shift and move the cogs of government and actually make an impact on a pandemic, you need the trust of people. And if you have abused that trust, or if you have made people suspect your motives along the way, it's making it so clear that character matters. And so there is this wave of Christians at this point in time who are going, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, we didn't think about the character thing, we didn't get involved in the politics thing because we thought we'd just leave it to them. This is a time where above all other times where Christians need to be not running away from this stuff, but getting involved, joining parties or standing as independents, being involved in their local councils, being involved in their local school governance. This is a time for being involved. Some may be called to stand for Parliament. Some may be called to go beyond that. But this is a time for people to be involved, because we need people of character to be involved in public life. And if we didn't know it before, we certainly know it now.
Wow. Yeah. So we would encourage you, everyone who's listening, to keep building relationships, getting involved, being salt and light, the people that God's created you to be. And if you're interested in any of this and you find yourself in any of these spheres that Andy's talked about, we'd love to encourage you to check out the GLX community, which engages and gathers people from all spheres of society to equip and to go and make a difference wherever God's placed you. So hook us up. And Christians in Politics. Yeah. ChristiansInPolitics.org.uk. Our new site's just been launched with some incredible videos and resources that you can use in your context. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. It's such a pleasure to speak to you.
Bless you, Joy. Thank you.
Thank you.